Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka The Knockdown. Jay, how's it going, my guy?
TV, we can't even have a weekend's break without having an insane set of stuff in the NBA, bro. NBA and WNBA news was across the board, but TV, there's only two storylines over the last couple of days that we can really focus on right now. This is going to take 2 episodes out of this week for us with the NBA trade deadline, because honestly, today's episode has to be its own thing, and we'll get to the rest of the week when the trade deadline actually hits. Everything else will get touched on later, but there's only 2 trades that really matter right now for today's episode.
You ain't lying, bro. I mean, like, we had this whole episode planned a week ago where we're going to pretend to be the GM and go back and forth. But as you can see, there's just no way. There's 2 massive trades, possibly the biggest trade in NBA history, happened this past weekend. We're going to be going through that, our thoughts on that. We also have another trade where Wemby finally gets his co-star. It's going to be a crazy episode, and I know that, you know, I've posted some videos on the TikTok and stuff. We're going to go fully deep into it in this episode. But before we get into that, and we have a lot to talk about, we do have to plug our socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at the @NockdownJ/ShootingJumper. Our socials can be found in the links in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, follow us on TikTok and Instagram for that best daily NBA content. You got the picks, you got the news, and when I tell you we got the news like right away. I was like half asleep, Jay, when this news dropped, and I had to like go up and make a video. That's how crazy this was. But we also got some other series going over there. We have a bunch of stuff happening on these pages as well, so be sure to check out Hit Your Free Throws on all of the social networks. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on any of the podcast networks, Spotify and Apple, as well as please subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. You can find all video formats of our podcast, as well as our YouTube shorts. Again, a lot of the stuff you can find there as well. Those stuff is updated daily, so you can make sure you check out the YouTube as well. Jay, are you ready to get into this? There is a lot to talk about.
Hey, fellas, strap in. Y'all already know which trades we talking about. At this point, it's just finally time for me to share my thoughts. If you've been tuned into social media, TV's more than made it clear how he feels on a handful of the things that's happened over the weekend. I've been festering, though, boy. Let me tell you something.
And yeah, don't worry about it, because we're going to start with, of course, the Luka for AD swap, LA and Dallas. If you guys want to check out the full trade, this is what we got over here. We have Luka, Kleber, and Markieff Morris to the Lakers. The Mavs get Christie, Anthony Davis in the 2029 first round pick, and then the Jazz, Danny Ainge, of course, comes in and just gets Jalen Hood-Schifino and 2 second-round picks for absolutely nothing, as Danny Ainge does. Jay, I'm going to throw it over to you. Your thoughts on this trade? I said my thoughts, but I'm going to throw it over to you. Initial thoughts. Where were you when this happened? Because this craziest trade in NBA history, in my opinion.
48 hours removed, and I still don't understand. Let me set the scene, man. I was at work. I work late shifts for one of my other jobs. So I was at work, minding my own business. We're about to actually shut things down, and in the middle of me kind of cleaning up stuff, this pops up on my phone, and I promise y'all, similar to probably everybody else, I thought this was fake. I'm thinking this is the Charm Sharania page. You know what I mean? One of those like side Twitter accounts that like, there's no way in the world that this says what it says. I see the Luka Doncic trade pop up on my screen, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Obviously, you go further through. Sham says, "No, this is for real. This is the trade. Here's the package. Boom, boom, bam. All right, cool." Similar to anybody who watched Kenny Beecham's video recently on his Kenny 2 page, where he said the same thing that I thought, which was, go check Instagram. Because you know how Twitter get, man. Twitter, even with how everything is, man, Elon got Twitter on lockdown, which means at the end of the day, maybe my man Shams, even though he said it was true, maybe he got hacked. You know what I'm saying? Let me double check. I go on Instagram, Chris Haynes chimes in. You start getting stuff from Tim McMahon. Everything starts to slowly populate. And now we're playing catch up, because everybody named Mama had no idea that this was even on the table. So as the information is popping out, it's starting to settle in my mind that, like, yo, Luka Doncic is about to be a Laker at the age of 25 years old. And the first thing that came to mind is, for anybody who really wanted to say that the Lakers' luster was starting to really wear off over the last couple of years, you clearly must not be watching the game of basketball, sir. Because over the last, what feels like millennia of basketball, this team never fails to surprise us. They never fail to, when you just least expect it, they do something that allows them to get a superstar player at a prime time within their career that allows the timeline of their greatness to extend. Right? The Anthony Davis, that's all folks shirt pops out, and not even 48 hours later, cha-ching, all the kids get traded, and Anthony Davis is wearing a Lakers jersey, and within 2 to 3 seasons, even in the COVID year, they hosted up the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Only a couple of seasons removed from that, you get a Luka Doncic, who many would argue is maybe a top 3, at worst top 5 player in the league at this very moment, next to a 40-year-old LeBron James, who is still 23, 8-7 this year. And everything started to spin in my head. And obviously, we're going to get to Nico Harrison's actual comments in a while, because TV has all the quotes, because it's absolutely ridiculous. But the thing that really stood out to me the most is that I'm very concerned about what this even means for the trade market moving forward, bro. Because they didn't even do the Clippers thing and trade and blame the second apron, TV.
Yeah.
They blamed conditioning. They blamed not wanting to sign the Supermax contract next year. Something we've never seen anybody in NBA history choose to avoid. We've never seen it, TV. We've never seen it. No one's ever elected to downplay the Supermax in order to go ahead and take a shorter and significantly less. This is a $115 million discount, TV. By him now being with the Lakers instead of being with the Dallas Mavericks, it's somewhere between $115 and $120 million of a haircut. All because he's no longer is going to be signing the absolute Supermax with the Dallas Mavericks. Something, again, we have never seen before. Never seen before outside of, I believe, maybe Kristaps Porzingis. I think.
Yeah, I think that's the only other guy who lost out on at least like close to $100 million from like not getting the Supermax.
Bro, it's a joke, bro.
No,
it's a joke.
No, like honestly, like all you said there, the fact that you're laughing there, I'm honestly still the same way. Like I made a video when it happened, I was laughing because it didn't feel real. I made another video 12 hours later trying to compartmentalize everything.
Yeah.
I still couldn't. I'm 2.5 days removed from everything happening in general. And I still can't. Like, seriously, you don't see a trade for a 25-year-old. Bro, this guy was the MVP odds-on favorite coming into the season.
How many times has he come into the league? How many seasons has he come in where he was the odds-on favorite before the year started?
Or top two. That's like
at least.
At the very least. This guy has been All-NBA since his second season.
TV, what happened just last year? What happened just last season?
The NBA Finals, bro.
My goodness, brother.
And bro, okay, we're going to talk about Nico Harrison. I'm going to bring up some stuff he said already.
Please.
He said, like, we don't like Luka and the culture that he was saying there. We didn't like the way he was playing defense. We didn't like our defensive identity. You were the 5th best defense after you traded for Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington last year.
TV, they ended the year as the 7th best defense, and that's with a slow start to the year.
Yes. So it's like, even if defense was an issue, you figured it out. You figured it out. And you're going to blame Luka for his defensive effort in the NBA Finals versus an all-time great Celtics team with an all-time great offense who absolutely destroyed the Eastern Conference, and you thought that Luka Doncic was the problem?
That was your issue. That's the part. That's the part that gets me. Defense wins championships. That was the concept. That was the concept.
No, Luka averaged 31, 9, and 6 in the finals last year.
TV, here's the question. If defense wins championships, who is guarding Luka all postseason?
That's what I'm saying, bro.
Because whoever was guarding Luka clearly realized that they needed some help on defense because Buddy was giving them problems,
bro,
for 3 straight series.
Bro, here's the second highest score on his team during the finals was Kyrie Irving with 19.7. You know who was next? PJ Washington at 10. At 10 points per game. And that's the guy you're blaming for your culture. The guy who has backpacked your franchise for 5 freaking years. You never see a situation with the Dallas Mavericks. You had Dirk Nowitzki for 2 decades. You had an all-time great, a top 5 power forward. And then when you just luck out because of some team's incompetence to trade DeAndre Ayton and Marvin Bagley, he falls to you at number 3. You make the trade happen. He becomes a superstar, an all-NBA first-team player by year 2.
Second season.
Second season. He carries you to a playoff series every year, 2 conference finals, 1 NBA finals, and you think that his conditioning, the way he plays defense, is the issue? No, Jay. There's other stuff that he said. I'm gonna get to it really quickly here.
We're breaking down all the quotes because we were talking about this before we even hopped on the podcast.
Yeah.
I said it before we hopped on pod, and we're gonna do it right now. If you go through every block of quote that we got from Nico Harrison, and you pull that quote up, and you pull this trade back up, you can literally poke a hole in every little segment of information that he provided us during his rant of what was supposedly a explanation for what the hell we saw 2 days ago.
Here's some things that he kind of said. Anthony Davis fits our time frame. He helps us win now and in the long term. Yeah, say that right away, trading away your 25-year-old superstar. He also mentioned that his version of long term is 4 to 5 years. And then he said after that, he's like, I don't even know if I'm gonna have a job past then. Like,
he damn sure ain't now. If we didn't think he was before, he damn sure ain't now.
Nico thanked Rob Pelinka for keeping this deal on the down low, saying, "You know what? I didn't want Luka to know about this. I didn't want the fans to know about this. I didn't want any other teams to know about this. Thank you, Rob Pelinka, for keeping this on the DL, on the down low." Well, Rob Pelinka's probably thinking, well, if you're gonna give me Luka Doncic, I'm not gonna tell anyone. Why would I want anyone else calling your phone?
It's a secret if friends are involved, my boy. What's going on? Like,
Nico's taking Rob as if they're like boys, and they're like, "Thank you so much for keeping this a secret."
But here's the thing, though, TV. But here's the thing: they are boys, though. That's the sick part. Rob Pelinka and Nico Harrison date back to the early Kobe Bryant agency days. Yeah. You have to remember, Rob Pelinka represented Kobe Bryant during a time frame where Nico Harrison was still one of the head presidential associates with the Nike brand prior to taking the Dallas Mavericks job. These dudes are low-key tight. This is the equivalent of a hookup. That's what this is, bro. No, this is equivalent of a hookup. Boys being boys really did their thing this go around.
I think so too, but the thing is, I also just think that Nico's just stupid. I think it's just an idiot. Because also what happened is Rob included the 2031 first round pick and Dalton Connect. That was in the original trade package. But then Rob convinced Nico that Luka Doncic was a risk to be coming into the Lakers because of his conditioning. And Jay, this is what threw me off the most. His drinking. Bro convinced Nico that he was an alcoholic. Like, what? He said, and then Nico's probably like, you might be right. His drinking is like, what? What do you mean?
Here's how I look at it, TV. If he can drink his way into 30, sober, he must be a 40 ball. I'm just saying, dog.
Bro, I don't care if this man has a freaking Corona in his left hand when dribbling. If he's giving me freaking 30, 10, and 10, I don't care. Yo, again, this is all, and again, this guy's been All-NBA the last 5 years. All-NBA first team. Mind you that. Also, overweight, they said that they gave him 11 days to condition himself back in November. To after that, he said he ballooned up to 260-something pounds. He would blame his conditioning, his defensive effort. And you have to remember, guys, when I read all that stuff, I'm thinking, well, Nikola Jokic isn't, the image of
we're like this right now. We're like this right now. Oh my gosh,
he's not the image of male peak performance. Zion Williamson has missed 70% of his NBA games. And the Pelicans have not traded him for his conditioning. Joel Embiid, former MVP. This man has missed 400 plus games in his career. And this team wouldn't do it? But Luka coming in overweight into a season is what did it for Nico Harrison.
TV, the only organization that's ever worried about body fat percentage going into an NBA season is the Miami Heat, and I'm sure even they would have let Luka Doncic play, bro. Let's be real right now, my G. What is going on right now?
These issues are for someone who is a fringe starter. This is a conversation for someone who is very much expendable, not the top 3 to 5 player in basketball. And after all this, he made this trade. He didn't request anything. He didn't say anything. Like, he didn't, like, hint at anything about not signing the Supermax. This is not him, like, requesting a trade. Chandler Parsons said this man just bought a $15 million house in Dallas. This guy thought he was going to be there for life. But no. Nico Harrison made the deal. So more and more, and the thing is, like, more stuff is going to come out. More stuff is going to come out. And every time I see something come out about this and these, like, extra reports, it just makes me think none of this is satisfying anyone. If anything, more stuff that comes out, the more we look at Nico Harris as an absolute idiot.
Yeah,
Bro,
for sure.
We can't even say who's the winners and who. We know who the winner is.
Facts. I mean, TV. Here's the one quote that we talked about pre-pod that I think makes the most sense that we have to address. He said, "Defense wins championships. We are built for success now and in the future." TV.
His future's 4 to 5 years, by the way.
Let me name some of the main rotational players on this team that are going to probably get significant take. Anthony Davis, obviously, big part of this trade, 31 years old. Spencer Dinwiddie, 31 years old. Kyrie Irving, 32 years old. Najee Marshall, 27 years old. Caleb Martin, who they acquired earlier today.
Yeah, by the way,
we're going to talk about that a little bit later on.
By the way, Quinn Grimes got traded. One of the younger guys on their team.
Again,
and
young player traded for 29-year-old Caleb Martin. Oh, yeah, by the way, Dwight Powell, who's probably going to still get regular center rotation minutes behind Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, 33 years old. Oh, yeah, Klay Thompson, 34 years old. Yeah. At least 6 of your 8 to 9 man rotation is 31 or above. Yeah, but you're built for the next 4 years. My fault.
And that is how long he sees the future of this team. That is already concerning. If you can't see the big picture, especially with Luka Doncic, a 25-year-old superstar, you can't see the full picture of this. The Lakers, like, you think that Rob Pelinka's your boy? No. He just said, you know what? I'm not talking to anyone about this because I need to execute the biggest fleecing of my life.
I think Rob Pelinka, I never thought we would say
Nico Harrison in the introductory press conference. Thank you to Nico Harrison and the Dallas Mavericks for helping us complete this trade. I'm like, nah, that's just wild.
Here's my thing, bro. I think legitimately, and I'm not even saying this to be funny, dude, but I mean, I'm being low-key serious, and if it comes off as funny, whatever. But, dude, I'm going to be honest. Rob Pelinka has officially taken Danny Ainge's spot as the biggest finesser in the NBA.
Well, he definitely has the biggest.
It's not even close
in NBA history, like up there, yeah.
We've seen Danny Ainge make so many different moves that maybe his overall track record still stacks up pretty well. But Rob Pelinka has put together a pretty good track record of himself with this easily outweighing any individual trade we've ever seen Danny Ainge pull off. We've seen Danny Ainge reject trades maybe of a similar caliber to this, a la trading for Kevin Durant back in, what was that, 2017-ish? I think it was around that area that, like, Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler, Paul George, those were the kind of names that were coming up. But outside of that, name the next biggest move to this in recent NBA history.
In terms of shock factor, the only closest thing was maybe Durant to the Warriors in terms of actual shock factor.
But that was a signing, though. So probably the Paul George trade that brings Kawhi as well?
I guess, but also, though, that was telegraphed for days. Like, there was days of telegraph for this. I was telling a few of my friends, like, nothing has compared to this in terms of how sudden it was and how there was no noise around it.
Yeah.
No noise. Freaking, like, we didn't even get to this part where Nico Harrison basically said, like, where stuff is coming out now that Nico Harrison, it felt like he was trying to force Luka Doncic out, whether it was firing all the trainers that he liked, firing all the staff that he liked, not having a good relationship with Luka Doncic in general. Bro, is it just simple as Nico Harrison didn't like Luka, therefore Luka didn't like Nico Harrison, and then he let personal business get in between actual business? And then this is what happened. And he said, and the thing is too, he did this trade without consultation with the coach. When he brought this idea up to the owners, they freaking laughed at his face. Like, he went into business for himself because it like just because like he didn't want anyone disagreeing with him, and then he ended up pulling off this trade. He said this is the one that he personally designed.
I think the biggest thing is this is the side of coaching that we don't see actually. And I understand that this is a front office move, right? But this is a side of coaching that we don't see, that when we talk about all of the better coaches in the NBA, we always talk about the X's and O's and overall execution on the floor. But we never talk about the managing of personalities and understanding the ability to read the room. It's a detrimental thing. It's one of those things that can really kill a franchise. You know what I'm saying? The ability to be able to understand the guys in your locker room and galvanize those guys in a way. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason why Luke Walton with Sacramento was so expendable, despite the fact that from an X's and O's standpoint, he probably was a relatively okay coach. I'm gonna be honest. With everything he probably picked up in Golden State and everything like that, he probably was a good X's and O's coach. But there's a reason why he was unsuccessful in Sacramento. You know what I mean? There's a reason why when you look at some of these other franchises and you look at their coaching situations, you look at them and you kind of wonder, like, wait a minute, you have all the talent in the world. Everything lines up where you guys have the possibility of being a legitimate squad within your given conference. What's the problem here? Why is there a lack of success? And it comes to a point where you have to kind of point at the managing of talent and the managing of personalities. And this is one of those where, like, Nico Harrison essentially went on a kamikaze mission to tank the Dallas Mavericks by his own accord. That's essentially what happened. He just set the Dallas Mavericks back at least 4 to 5, if not 10 years back from what they had as a potential buildup for their franchise, out of a vendetta built only within his own volition.
He let personal quarrels between himself and Luka Doncic. Again, Luka even said, like, close to situation, that the Mavs got rid of everyone he liked.
True.
Like,
it started with Dorian Finney-Smith, I believe.
Dorian Finney-Smith got rid of the trainer that he liked. Remember, he is a trainer for Team USA too. This same guy was also one of the head trainers for Team USA. They got rid of everyone that Luka was comfortable with. I think that this was probably years in the making. Nico was hoping that maybe Luka would be the one to maybe request a trade out so he can have some sort of validation. And when that wasn't going to happen, he went into business for himself and said, hey, if he's not going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I know everyone else in the room here, literally everyone else in the room, because the rest of the room is not stupid and understands how important Luka Doncic is. So the only way for me to get this done is by doing it on my own. Legitimately. And
That's crazy, dude.
And it cost the Dallas Mavericks a generational talent. One that comes every 20 years. Ask some franchises. If you look at the Portland Trail Blazers, they've literally just had Clyde Drexler and Damian Lillard. You can only hope for someone like that to come by. And Luka came right after Dirk, and he let personal problems get away with it. He screwed the entire franchise, Jay. He literally screwed the entire franchise.
I've never seen a sabotage job like this. This might be the biggest inside job in sports, dog. I ain't gonna lie. Like, I've never seen anything like this before.
I've never seen this many conspiracy theories, but can you blame people for thinking that there's something more to this?
Not at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
Because this is just too ridiculous. Like, we're trying to talk about it right now, and the more we think about it, it's like the more ridiculous it sounds. Leave us your thoughts down below. By the way, shout out to the freaking Utah Jazz for freaking just sliding in. Danny Ainge had no idea this trade was going on. He heard 2 second-round picks, and he just said, you know what, just add me in. And then 30 minutes before, he's like, oh, wait, because on the Lakers now? He did not.
Before we fully transition, do you have any thoughts on where the Mavericks move forward, just from a roster construction standpoint? I mean, I know the actual move is bonkers, but we do have to actually look at their roster now that they've done what they've done.
Well, if he thinks that the timeline is 4 to 5 years, then you go for these 4 to 5 years. Nico, back up your talk. If you're going to go for these 4 to 5 years, you're going to have to make sure that you have this team competitive for the next 4 to 5 years. If you don't win a championship, you've given up on a generational talent. A Western Conference appearance is not enough. And then another NBA Finals appearance is not enough. It has to be a championship or bust. And the way that you look at a rebuild as only 4 to 5 years as is trying to build this team, because you don't even see yourself there in 4 to 5 years, yeah, that's just not a great look. But, we talked about the trade, Quentin Grimes, 2025 second-round pick. over to the 76ers in exchange for Caleb Martin. They need a forward. They got a forward. Is this going to really change the trajectory of this team? Probably not. But they still need. They probably need to get rid of what? Daniel Gafford now at this point, because I feel like there's just too many bigs, especially if they want to try and finish finish games with 80 at the 5. I think
It depends because you have to remember one of the last things that was said by Anthony Davis prior to him being traded was he told Laker Nation that he wanted a center for their team.
I mean, they
That's
did said it,
another.
but the thing is, like Nico said in his freaking press conference, he's gonna end that games at the 5. So
That's good and dandy, but every coach has tried to make this thing happen. And look, Anthony Davis is on ESPN is listed as a power forward right now.
hey,
So say what you want, but this man is not gonna go out quiet just because he got traded here. This is how I look at it. As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to this trade, the infrastructure that they have with Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis as a two-man group, both as offensive weapons and of course Anthony Davis as a defensive anchor, is a good place to start. I think they still have good infrastructure. Klay Thompson is still a knockdown three-point shooter. Obviously, we know that guys like a Derek Lively, like a Daniel Gafford, are very solid on the inside. PJ Washington is still having a pretty strong year and is one of their better defensive players at the big man spot. I like Caleb Martin. I love Najee Marshall for this team. Like Dallas still has the infrastructure where we don't think they're just going to be a team that goes out sad all because Luka's no longer on the team.
no.
That's not it.
There's a path where they make it to the conference finals again.
This is a team that is still going to be solid. They're still going to be dangerous in the Western Conference. The biggest thing that's overall going to be that has to be understood by anybody that looks at the outcome of this trade moving forward. This is all going to be weighed based off team success moving forward. Like you said beforehand, the championship or bust aspect of this, that's not hyperbole all because people want to make it feel like there's more pressure behind this than there actually is. No, you don't trade a generational talent that's 25 years old in the prime of his career with real indications of what it is that they truly need to do moving forward. You grabbed Klay Thompson this offseason with the idea of being able to give floor spacing to a Luka Doncic-led team, right? This is a team that before the season started, it looked like everything was built to kind of double down on everything that was successful around Luka Doncic last season. Getting Najee Marshall as another ball handler, but also act as a defensive perimeter stopper. Going after Quentin Grimes, who was a youthful version of that similar archetype, right? Being able to kind of really double down on forward play while even stretching the floor by going after a Klay Thompson. Everything was built in a way that felt like they were doubling down on building around Luka. I think that this group can still be successful without Luka Doncic being at the very helm of everything. But this is a team that is going to be judged based off of their success moving forward because at the end of the day, Nico Harrison is going to be known as the guy who traded Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't result in significant success, you will always be the guy who traded Luka Doncic, bro.
Yeah. And look, you don't just trade Luka Doncic the player. This guy was freaking a culture icon there in Dallas. This guy was the face of the Dallas Mavericks. The guy people pay to see money to. Try to explain that to your season ticket holders. But yeah, on the Lakers side of things, fit doesn't really matter right now. You got Luka Doncic.
Luka Doncic. They'll get a center later. I've been telling people that all day. They'll get a center later, man.
Hey, look, if the center is the most needed space right now, the position right now, try and trade for that, even if it's a temporary spot. But I do think that this puts a lot less pressure on them when trying to win this year. This gives them, you know what the Mavericks did? They gave them a lifeline. This team was supposed to be done in about 2 to 3 years. They gave them an extra decade.
Facts.
They gave them an extra decade to figure things out. And Luka Doncic does that for you. So, I mean, the only move they really have to make is make one more center move and then try and see how far a LeBron and Luka-led team can do in the playoffs. I think it's gonna be fun to watch. How about you? I'm excited.
That's gonna be one of the most dangerous teams in the whole league. Bump the West. That's gonna be one of the most dangerous teams in the entire league. I mean, even as early as this season, honestly.
This is how much of a ceiling raiser Luka is. He can take you alongside LeBron James. You still have a solid third guy in Austin Reeves, who's been actually really good all year. People haven't talked about him a lot, but he's been very solid all year. If they can get a center, bro, I mean, your boy Vucic's on the market. Let's see if they can figure something out there. But they just need another center. I'm excited to see how this team's going to do because they're the fifth seed right now. They have a chance to get home court advantage in the playoffs. They're only
Yeah.
like 2.5 games behind or something like that. So
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Literally a game and a half back
game and a
behind
half
the
now, yeah.
Nuggets. Yeah.
Game and a half behind. Luka can help with that, especially if he's playing this Saturday, which is a good start. So, yeah. I mean, let us know what you guys think of this trade down below. Let us know what you think also of the Quentin Grimes trade that happened. But yeah, we're on day 3 of this, and me and Jay are still crashing out over what's happening because we still can't figure out what's going on. But Jay, there's another trade that happened, and what's crazy about this is that this is this is a very consequential trade, but no one cared because this is like 24 hours removed from the Luka Doncic situation. But De'Aaron Fox and Zach LaVine have switched teams.
Yeah.
It's a 3-team trade between the Spurs, the Kings, and the Bulls. I have the full details over here. We have De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin going to the Spurs. The Kings get 3 first-round picks, actually 2 first-round picks, and 5 second-round picks for Zach LaVine and CD Sissoko. Trey Jones, and some other guys going over there to the Bulls, and the Bulls get their own pick back, Jay. So you don't have to worry about the protections from the Spurs. I'm gonna throw it over to you. You are the Bulls fan. By the way, the reason I said it's basically 2 first-round picks is because they have the lottery protected 2025 Hornets pick, and let's be honest, that is not conveying. So that's just another 2 second-round picks to add, and they only get the Spurs unprotected 2027 pick and a 2031 unprotected Minnesota pick, which they got from the Rob Dillingham trade. But Jay, throwing it over to you. Your thoughts on this deal, and basically what the Bulls got in return, which is not a lot.
Why is it that we gave up easily the first or second best player in the trade and we only got 1 draft pick back? What the hell is going on?
It's your
What the hell is that? Yo, you want to know the first thing that popped in my mind besides the fact of seeing our first round pick come back? Yo, why the hell did the Spurs get away with not having to give up Stephon Castle, Keldon Johnson, any of the Atlanta Hawks picks that they have?
That is the one I'm talking about. The fact that they were able to keep all of these Hawks picks. The Hawks just lost Jalen Johnson, by the way, for the season, and they have control of this year's pick of theirs.
The fact that they didn't even slotted at the 7th spot right now. Do you know that? They would be picking in the top 7 if the season ended today, with a team that already has Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox as a lifeline for them.
And they got off the freaking Zach Collins contract and gave it to you. Crazy.
I think the most impressive thing about the San Antonio Spurs in this trade, if I'm being so real with you, is not only were they able to keep the Atlanta Hawks picks, they were able to keep Stephon Castle, they were able to keep Jeremy Sohan, they were able to keep Keldon Johnson, they were able to keep Devin Vassell. TV, going into the summer, you know the San Antonio Spurs are a top 3 team in terms of cap space available. Like, and mind you, De'Aaron Fox's contract isn't up this year; it's up the next season. They're gonna have De'Aaron Fox for a year and a half before they have to pay him.
Yeah, this is the Jaden Daniels situation in Washington right now, and like over there, and like for the Commanders, you're paying your best player like $14-15 million a year. Get stars around him now before he gets expensive. That's what the Spurs are doing.
I can't believe this. I cannot believe this, dude. I'm not going to lie to you. The fact that it's like we're so good, being the Chicago Bulls, we're so good at getting fleeced that it's almost starting to become like questionable as if like that's the goal. You know what I mean? Like you get Trey Jones, and I love Trey Jones. You know how I feel about Tyus, so you know how it goes.
Yeah.
We get Trey Jones on a roster where now our best player already is an undersized guard in Kobe White. Like, think about that, bro. That's insane. That's insane. And also, I want to go on like a mini tangent real quick because this is this is a thing for Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine is a guy who's been coveted by the Sacramento Kings for a long time. If you guys remember back in, I believe it was 2020, it was 2020, 2021, somewhere around there, maybe even 2019. It was within that pocket. I remember that Zach LaVine was up for contract, and there was real negotiations with the Chicago Bulls where it was starting to become a real wonder as to whether or not Chicago wanted Zach LaVine back after trading from him and having him for 2 or 3 seasons or so after the Minnesota Timberwolves deal. And Remember, it came down to Chicago and it came down to the Sacramento Kings. And if it weren't for the Chicago Bulls matching the Kings, Zach LaVine was going to be a Sacramento King years ago. This is a team that truly does want Zach LaVine and has been highly favored his skill set for a while. But here's the thing that I hate for Zach LaVine is that I've wanted to see him on a winning team. I want to see him in a winning situation, bro. I just want to see that for him.
That's the thing. Yeah,
and if you look at the Sacramento Kings, and Kenny said this on his video, so I don't want to like overlap it because it sounds like I'm just stealing points at this point. But I thought the exact same thing. The funniest part about the Sacramento Kings and their build right now is they're Chicago Bulls East. I mean, Chicago Bulls West. The Sacramento Kings are Chicago Bulls West. They have DeMar DeRozan, just like we had before. They have Zach LaVine, just like we had before. They have Malik Monk, who's basically Kobe White. They have DeMontis Sabonis, who's basically a better version of Nikola Vucevic. And then at the 4, they have Keegan Murray, he's basically Patrick Williams. I will say Keegan Murray has been a better player than Patrick Williams since being drafted. So they're basically like an upgraded version. Yeah, but Patrick Williams-esque nonetheless. They're basically a slightly more improved version of the team that he's coming from. In a conference that's much more difficult. Yeah. Exactly. You're on the exact same kind of roster that was floating around the bottom of the Eastern Conference the last year and a half. The only difference is now you're in the Western Conference where it gets even more grimy. That's the thing. When he was in talks for being on Miami or Golden State or what's some of the other
Orlando.
I know we were joking about Detroit for like a hot minute, but like Orlando, that's another good one.
Yeah.
Like those are all teams where the upside points in the direction of really believing that like, okay, he can actually be like pretty lethal. He can actually be lethal for a team that's going to make real noise in the postseason. Like, do we think the Sacramento Kings make the postseason? Like confidently, you know what I mean? They are currently ninth in the West. They are currently ninth in the West right now. In order to just be solidified top 6, they're backed by only 3 games, so not bad. But the 2 teams, there's 3 teams behind them that have to be notably watched: the Phoenix Suns, the Golden State Warriors. Oh yeah, and the team you just traded with, the San Antonio Spurs. So, in other words, nothing is guaranteed, and your team did not necessarily improve significantly in any way that makes you feel like they're going to be a lock to be a team that we see in the postseason this year. And I hate that for Zach LaVine. I hate that.
No, I really when like the rumors were starting to like ramp up between Zach LaVine and Vucevic both going to the Warriors, I felt super excited about that for Zach LaVine.
I remember you texted me about that.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be a good spot for him. But him going to the Kings, I mean, you mentioned it, man. It's Bulls West. It really is. And in a tougher conference. I think the Kings could have done better. The fact that they didn't get any of their young prospects, the fact that they didn't get any Atlanta Hawks picks, that's already in of itself. The Spurs got De'Aaron Fox, who they probably could have signed a year and a half from now, but they gave up inconsequential pieces. The 2027 first-round pick. Yeah, Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox. Let's be honest, I think it's going to be like in the bottom 5 of the first round. They were able to dump the Zach Collins contract. The Kings dumped the freaking Kevin Huerter contract onto you guys. Like, I feel like the Bulls could have gone a bit more if they've done a different deal. I feel like the Kings messed up and they could have gotten a bit more for De'Aaron Fox. I know, because the Spurs have assets. But now their most valuable assets, along with some of the young core, can be traded for a 3rd star to pair with Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox now. It's looking very good for the Spurs. I feel like the Kings had a golden opportunity to at least gain some like assets to like potentially even like trade if they want to stay competitive. But they didn't get nearly enough for De'Aaron Fox, and now the Bulls. I'm just used to it now. I'm just glad you guys are picking a direction.
Yeah, I think at this point it's kind of like full sellout mode. Like if Nikola Vucevic makes it past the trade deadline, like clearly like we're just still as confused as we've ever been. So the hope is that this is a full-blown commitment that Zach LaVine was just the first domino to fall in this iteration, because the DeMar DeRozan trade, the Alex Caruso trade, if they weren't enough, like Zach LaVine definitely has to be like the straw that breaks the camel's back, so to speak.
Yeah.
For the Bulls, they were the Danny Ainge in this one with the Luka trade, man. They were just there. They were just there to help facilitate, man. I ain't gonna lie. As much as it sounds crazy to say that, given the fact that Zach LaVine was part of that trade, when you look at what they got on the back end of it, the only thing that really comes of real value was them being able to get back control of their pick in this draft class. And I'm gonna be honest with you, unless the Bulls land in the top 3, it doesn't matter. Like, this is a relatively strong class, but unless the Bulls land in the top 3, regaining control of their pick in this class is not life-changing enough to feel like you got enough in exchange for Zach LaVine, who played himself back into real contention for a good overall trade package, bro. Like, you got to remember, earlier on this year, we were having conversations about possibly having to attach something to Zach LaVine in order to be able to move off of him. He had such a strong start to the year and has been playing so good so far this season that you can almost say he played himself back to positive value by us even getting our first round pick back. But it goes to tell you that in a different situation with a different team in conversations, we would have and should have gotten more. And that's the sad part. That's the sad part, honestly.
You guys could have gotten more. But at the end of the day, the team that's most interesting, the San Antonio Spurs, they came out of this looking like gold, man. If I could give an A++ to a team on this deal, it has to be the Spurs. You got Fox and Wemby for the remainder of this season. Honestly, low-key, if they can get a top 8 seed and get 2 playing games, I think that's a successful season for the Spurs at this point. You're able to keep all of these guys. You still have even like a contract in Harrison Barnes that you can pair with like some of your young guys to maybe even get a bigger star. The Spurs are looking fine and dandy right now, aren't they, Jay?
I'm going to tell you something. I thought the most interesting thing about this with De'Aaron Fox is that you almost kind of saw it coming. When they first started talking about the concept of De'Aaron Fox having a team in mind, you knew it was going to be one of the Texas squads. You knew it. If you know De'Aaron Fox's track record, it goes all the way back to his wife who played at Texas Tech. I believe his number actually with San Antonio is going to be 4.
Yeah, number four,
because of her, right?
Yeah, it is.
But it goes deeper than that. If you look back into his overall lineage, dating back to high school, dating back to AAU, De'Aaron Fox is a legend in Texas. It's not even close. When it comes to basketball royalty, he's a legend in Texas. It was only a matter of time that he was going to be considering either Houston or San Antonio, because I think at the time, especially with Luka Doncic being a guy that we thought was going to be a forever Dallas Maverick, the idea of him being on the Mavericks never really came to fruition anyway. It never felt like anything that was realistic. But San Antonio and Houston, especially given both of their overall draft capital for both teams and the kind of asset pool that both teams had, one of these teams was going to be the most likely destination. And if not through trade, again, De'Aaron Fox made it clear that not this season, obviously, because of contract reasons, but the following offseason, that's where he was going to go. He was going to go in that direction.
Yeah. And the fact that he's able to go there with basically the full crew they have over there at San Antonio as well is just absolutely fantastic. Seeing, like, just these two guys together, getting Wemby. We've been waiting for Wemby to get his point guard. We thought it was going to be, we were like, great. Chris Paul's a great upgrade from Trey Jones this year. Oh, Stephon Castle has been a lot better than we thought it was going to be. Oh, wait, now he has De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah.
He's 1.5 years into his career, and he already has a top 10 point guard in the league.
Yeah.
Wemby is feeling great right now, and the amount of space that Fox is going to get now to even just go, especially with the way Wemby is shooting threes to be able to attack the paint, it's going to be just free real estate over there.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing and the most important thing when it comes to the San Antonio trade is just that, like, they're doing things in a way, they're slow grinding this in a way that we never saw with, like, the New Orleans Pelicans with Anthony Davis, or even for that matter with Zion Williamson to a lesser degree, right? Like, we've had good examples, or I guess you could say bad examples, of teams having generational talents, especially at the big man spot, and rushing the order while not actually getting the best version of a supporting cast that they possibly can. If you remember, the best version of supporting cast we saw for Anthony Davis was when they had Rondo, DeMarcus Cousins, Jrue Holiday.
Yeah.
That was, I believe they still had Eric Gordon at the team at the time. Ryan Anderson was a 3-point spacer at the 4 position. That was the best version of Anthony Davis having a supporting cast in New Orleans, and that was about 5-6 years into his career at that point, right?
I mean, the difference between management. That we talked about management's a big thing here.
Yeah.
That's the difference between Pelicans management, especially like you can see their track record, and then you know how the Spurs track record is. We already like know their long history. They
Yeah.
know what to do. They understand what they have in Victor Wembanyama. They're wasting no time in trying to see how far this guy could take them.
Yeah, and I think they've done this in such a perfect way with CP being able to, still be able to coach up a guy like Stephon Castle. You bring in a guy who also was a CP underling. If anybody remembers CP3 elite camps, De'Aaron Fox was a standout point guard back in the day in the AAU days as part of CP3 elite camp as well. So this is a guy that also idolizes CP, which means that's going to be CP is going to be a very loud voice in that room if he hasn't already been, right? And that's gonna be a guy that De'Aaron, Stephon, Victor, Jeremy, these guys can turn to in a way where they're still in the early stages of being able to grow into this kind of team. But the difference between the Sacramento Kings and the San Antonio Spurs when you're talking about De'Aaron Fox's trajectory moving forward is the upside that this team has, not just from their overall talent on the floor, but like you mentioned before, management and their functionality between taking the steps that are necessary to build this team up as opposed to just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks, right?
Yeah,
This is a team that clearly proved to us when just a season ago we saw Jeremy Sohan at point guard. They're willing to kind of try things with the ideology that we're going to try and build these players into multi-versatile talents so that when we get to the peak of our powers, we have a fully optimized roster. And that's
100%.
something that I just don't think you could say about the Sacramento Kings, even with their recent success. Even with
Yeah, I
their
mean,
recent success.
it took them 20 years to get back to the freaking postseason. So the fact that and that kind of tells you what did you have to say. And then the Spurs, just each iteration, they got to the David Robinson years, the Tim Duncan years. They had a little bit of a lull there, but they still had some success with Marcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan. But now they got their generational talent back, and now you got an elite point guard to pair with him. They've done great. Let us know what you guys think down below. Your thoughts on each of this trade? We kind of all assume that that the Spurs are the winners, but I want to hear your thoughts on the other two teams as well. Jay, moving on to the next segment of the show. And we did this last week. We were supposed to do a few more of these, but the NBA just decided to go absolutely nuclear this past week. But we're still going to do one trade each, like we did last week, where I'm going to be a GM presenting you with a trade, and you're going to see if you're going to be accepting it, yes or no. And you're going to be doing the same for me. Jay, I'm gonna throw it over to you to start off with. I sent you a trade first last week. I'm gonna have you send me your trade over this week, and let's see if I'm gonna be accepting it as the opposing GM.
All right. So the trade that I found that I really liked actually is a three-teamer, and the main focal point of it is Brandon Ingram. And unironically, I'm glad that you ooped it to me to start off because we're actually going to pick up where we just left off with Brandon Ingram going to the San Antonio Spurs. In this three-team trade, the Spurs would get Brandon Ingram, who obviously only has 1 year left on his contract. But as I mentioned earlier on when we were talking about San Antonio was top three going into this summer in terms of cap space. They have 2 more seasons before they have to worry about paying Victor Wembanyama, and they have 1 more season before they need to worry about having to pay De'Aaron Fox. So they have the flexibility to go into this summer and be able to not only just sign more players, but particularly if they were to make this trade with Brandon Ingram, having him in the building for half a year and then being able to sway him to resign, they are one of the 3 to 4 teams that actually has enough financial competency to be able to not only sign him, but sign him for the kind of contract that he wants without killing their books. On the outside of that, the New Orleans Pelicans would get John Collins. This is where Utah would come in because they're going to come in and help as usual. The Pelicans would get John Collins and Walker Kessler, be able to get their center rotation going up, but the Spurs throw in the Atlanta Hawks 2026 first round swap rights pick. So they're going to essentially get
So not the 2025 pick.
I believe this is one where you can do the 2025 or the 2026. This will be one where I think you could pose either. For the trade that I found is 2026, but if you want to
Okay.
do it as 2025 to make it more viable for the upcoming, especially if you're the Pelicans who clearly are going to have to reevaluate heavy this summer in particular, let's make it the 2025
Yeah, sure.
Atlanta pick just for the sake that it's also a very valuable pick sitting where it is right now, right? For the Utah Jazz, the Jazz would get Keldon Johnson. I actually had to change this trade briefly because Zach Collins was initially in it. Excuse me. Actually, the Jazz are supposed to get the 2025 pick. So
Okay,
it
yeah.
has to be 20. It has to be 2026. I'll obviously reread this all out again. But the Jazz would get Keldon Johnson. They would get Malachi Branham, and they would get Charles Bassey along with that first round pick. That's the Atlanta pick through via San Antonio.
So basically the Pelicans get the swap
Rights in 2026.
swap right in 2026, and then the Jazz get the 2025. Okay, got you. Okay.
Yeah. So the full breakdown again to start with the teams. The trade itself is centered around Brandon Ingram, who will be going to the San Antonio Spurs. The New Orleans Pelicans will be getting John Collins and Walker Kessler from Utah, along with the 2026 swap rights from Atlanta in the first round of that year, while the Utah Jazz would get Keldon Johnson, Malachi Branham, and Charles Bassey, along with the 2025 first round pick this year. There's no protections under this one, so this one is not lottery protected or anything, and actually right now it would currently be sitting at 7th, which is interesting.
I will say I don't mind it for the Spurs. No. Okay, I would say if I'm the Spurs, I'm saying no. Just because for half a year giving away that Hawks pick and also the swap rights to the Hawks the year after, as well as Keldon Johnson for Brandon Ingram for half a year without the guarantee of him resigning, I would say no. If I'm the Pelicans, I'm doing this right away for half a year for trading away an expiring contract.
Let me throw in a caveat. What if you know, especially remember, like I said, they're a top 3 team in terms of cap space.
Why not why not just wait till the offseason then?
I think that's one way to look at it. And that was the one thing I was kind of interested about it too, is if there is the flexibility to just go get him in the offseason, does that help you? But then it made me think of Indiana. And the same thing kind of came to mind when I think back to the Pascal Siakam circumstance and getting him in your building, and it actually kind of fortified the situation to make him resign.
Yeah.
And that's the element I wonder about.
Yeah. Oh no. I like that idea. I just don't like the fact that they're giving away 2 first round picks in this sort of deal, especially since they're not getting anything from Utah really in this trade, and they're giving like a bunch of assets. I would say if there were like second round picks available, I would do that maybe instead of the pick this year. If I'm the Pelicans, by the way, I'm doing this. John Collins and Walker Kessler for Brandon Ingram, basically. That's a W. And you get a first round pick. I like it. I love that for them. The Utah Jazz, 1 unprotected first round pick. If it's a 2025 Hawks pick, I would be interested in it. I just think that trading away John Collins, who's had a pretty solid year, and Walker Kessler is someone that they were hoping to get a bit more for. I'm more on the fence for that, but I think the Spurs giving up 2 first round picks would be a bit much. And like if anything, at the very least, remove the first round pick for the Pelicans and maybe add maybe a second, but if that's possible. But besides that, I don't think all 3 parties would be like overly excited about this trade, except if you're the Pelicans, because I think that trading away and expiring Brandon Ingram for those 2 guys would be very good.
The reason why I brought it up again goes back to the Pascal Siakam ideology of maybe bringing in Brandon Ingram, also to help you make a postseason run, right? And you've already, in a certain extent, done that by bringing in De'Aaron Fox. This is clearly a forward-thinking move long term, but at the same time, De'Aaron Fox, Victor Wembanyama, Brandon Ingram as a trifecta is good enough to potentially win you at least 1 series in the postseason, if not at least get you through play-in games to make the postseason itself. That part I feel like is very true. I think the biggest hole in this trade that was presented when I found it is that if I'm the Utah Jazz, this is the ultimate fleece. If I'm walking around with the 2025 first round pick from Atlanta and they're currently free falling, because as far as I'm concerned, this trade was made while Atlanta was still playing relatively well. Obviously, now this is going to turn around with the Jalen Johnson
Yes, of
injury.
course, yeah.
This is one of those where it almost looks like the Spurs are giving too much up by giving both Atlanta picks up, mainly because the strength of the 2025 first round pick is so high. Because if Atlanta continues to free fall, this could be something where they can land into like the Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey range, and Lord only knows. See, that's the interesting thing too. If they were able to land top 3, imagine this Spurs team gets Ace Bailey. Do they even need a Brandon Ingram at that point? That becomes another thing that gets very interesting. So that's the thing that comes down to it. But the overall thought process around it is they need perimeter shot creation. I think they addressed that by getting De'Aaron Fox. But there still isn't enough on-ball repetition in terms of ball handling and ability to shot create for oneself and for others for that matter in terms of facilitation. And Brandon Ingram, like point Brandon Ingram is a very underrated player, dude. Like his ability to pass, he's a very good passer, high level shot creator. He is a dude who I think at the wing position could be very helpful for them. You slide a guy like Jeremy Sohan down to the 4. Your 5 position obviously is locked up with Victor Wembanyama. Brandon plays the 3. De'Aaron plays probably the 1 still. And then you have an interesting situation as to who you want to play at the 2. I believe Devin Vassell obviously should start. But think about that lineup. That's De'Aaron Fox, Devin Vassell, Brandon Ingram, Jeremy Sohan, Victor. Then you got Chris Paul off the bench. You put yourself in a really good situation there with the ability to score in a lot of different ways. But like you mentioned, I think the biggest hole in this, there's 2, is the Atlanta pick and maybe just being able to get Brandon Ingram in the summer.
Yeah, I think it's just the pick value, just because of, like you talked about how much Atlanta is falling, that they've become more valuable than even like they thought expected. So I mean, this trade was like what you said, it was like made a couple months ago. So
this was made before. This was made 4 months ago. So this was way before we saw anything with Atlanta in terms of what they currently are doing. And of course, the free falling for them with Jalen Johnson going down is significantly going to hurt this overall value as well. So now this probably looks like way too much. I think maybe for sure, if anything, if you still have to give up the 2025, I'm with you. Maybe that 2026 Atlanta pick swap, maybe that just gets converted into 2 seconds that are San Antonio's, and maybe you do it that way. Or maybe you give up a San Antonio first and a San Antonio second rather than giving up the Atlanta pick swap in 2026.
Yeah. So yeah, I think like for like most of this trade in general, I'm gonna have maybe just give it a no for now. But I think there's like some workings here where it could possibly be a thing. But I think it's especially because I think the Jazz are giving up like quite a bit in order for or like the Spurs are giving up a bit too much, especially with those 2 picks. Jay, here's my offer though. I told you I had some 2 in mind, but I'm gonna give you the Cam Johnson one. I feel like that's a bit more of a juicy pickup over here. So I'm the Nets. I'm offering you Cam Johnson. Jay, you're the Cavs. I feel like this is like the match made in heaven that we've been waiting for here. So I'm gonna offer you Karis LeVert. Just at this point, just reunite all of the old Nets players. You got D'Angelo Russell there. You got Nick Claxton. You got Karis LeVert. Let's party like it's freaking 2019 all over again. So let's do Karis LeVert, Georges Niang, 2025 Milwaukee second, 2026 Cavs second, and a 2031 top 5 protected pick. I think that the Nets are kind of overvaluing Cam Johnson. I understand they want to get 2 first-round picks for him, but they have to be realistic. This guy has not played more than I think like 60-something games in like a season throughout his career. He has had many injury issues, and compared to some of the guys that have been on the market and asked for a lot more, Cam Johnson's a very good player, but he's more of a glue type of guy. He's more of a 4th or 5th starter. So getting multiple like picks and as well as just 2 contracts, which you can either trade, you can move off of Karis LeVert, or you can let him expire in the summer. You get some more cap space. I feel like this trade is more than enough to provide for a Cam Johnson.
I think it's more than reasonable, and I also think if you're Cavs, you jump at that opportunity. You love what Karis LeVert has been able to do this season, but you also understand the rotation that you have. You've seen guys step up in a real way that you didn't have necessarily playing at this kind of level beforehand. Ty Jerome is obviously a very big player for them in terms of being able to function off the bench. Darius Garland's bounce back season makes it where if you stagger him with second units, he's able to run a second unit in a real way. And if you really think about it, Dean Wade and Karis LeVert
LeVert have been kind of this combo version of them trying to make up for the fact that they haven't had a true three. Kind of Isaac Okoro as well in a lesser degree.
And Max Strus
right. You almost forget Max Strus is on this team because he started out the season injured. But they've tried to create facsimiles of, like, you know, using guards in different rotations in order to fill that 3-man spot. But Cam Johnson just fills it in a more ideal way. And the fact that he's a knockdown 3-point shooter at a high volume, it gives them the kind of ideal spacing that they need in a way that they kind of looked at when they went after Max Strus, but with the overall side and defensive upside that gives them the flexibility against teams like when you play the Boston Celtics, when you play against the New York Knicks, right? Those teams that have bigger wings where you're going to have to go tit for tat with them, and a Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell lineup is not necessarily going to be able to hang in the same way because you're playing at a deficit based off size alone, right? Both of those teams play very big, and they both play very physical, despite the fact that it gets lost in the sauce that the both teams shoot the 3-pointer at a very high volume. They're both still very physical squads at the same time. We've seen Cleveland get punked by being out physical before. Being able to bolster their size is going to be a big way to be able to help combat that, right? But you look at the play of Evan Mobley so far this season, putting the ball on the floor much more. Jared Allen still being a defensive menace around the glass. And then, like I said before, Darius Garland playing at an all-NBA caliber level, at least an all-star caliber level. Definitely a dude who I thought was snubbed off the list, but the list was what it was. Donovan Mitchell, another guy who's playing at an all-NBA caliber level. They just need a guy, like you said. I think you actually described Cam Johnson in the perfect way that matches what they need, which is a glue guy in the middle to be able to hold everything up, act as that perimeter defensive anchor in its own kind of form, not necessarily as a stopper, but as a guy who could help keep everything together. And then on the offensive end, gives you the ability to stretch the floor in a way that creates a lane for Evan Mobley to drive, creates a lane for Darius Garland to drive, creates a lane for Donovan Mitchell to drive. And when you have that with the ability to also shoot the 3-ball at that kind of clip, and their team as a whole being one of the better 3-point shooting squads in the league, it just gives you so much versatility. Imagine a lineup where Donovan Mitchell was running point guard and you have Max Strus at the 2 and Cam Johnson at the 3. You're in a situation where it's the definition of pick your poison in terms of being able to guard these guys on the perimeter.
Yeah,
you know
and also
you
and also you can even like get versatility in the lineup because you could play Cam Johnson at the 4. You could also play him at the 4. And
that's very underrated. Yeah, that's a very underrated function.
It gives that team a lot more versatility. So if there's like times in the playoffs where you are getting exposed for having 2 big guys in the court, you're able to make that switch right away. I think Cam Johnson should be the number 1 target for the Cavs. Do I think that the Nets can get more for this? Maybe, maybe not. But I do think that right now they're overvaluing Cam Johnson and like how much it can actually get back for him. But getting like a 1 first-round pick, especially down again 2031, we don't know what happens with the Cavs up to that point.
Yeah,
you get some cap space, and you also get a couple like more second-round picks that you can use to bring in some more young guys. I don't think it's a bad deal for them either.
I think the biggest thing when you look at Cam Johnson as a target is you have to think about teams that actually make it where he fits. At the end of the day, he can go anywhere, but when you talk about being able to maximize his overall talent, the Cavs feel like the perfect match made in heaven to the point that it's kind of a joke that the deal's not done already. I'm not going to lie to you. This feels like one of those deals that's match made in heaven to the point that it sounds like the Nets being stingy about what they believe they should be able to get as value for him is the only reason why the deal hasn't happened yet. Because otherwise, if I'm the Cavs and I pick up the phone and I hear this trade as the possible acquisition, we're getting this done. We're getting this done within 5 minutes.
100%. Yeah, so yeah, you're 100% taking that trade off.
Yeah.
If you do the Cavs 100%. Nets, I mean, again, what were your expectations? This guy has not played more than 60 games in the season, so like you're gonna need to get, especially right now. I don't think he's playing right now either, as well. So temper your expectations, but also I think the Cavs, this is like the perfect guy. I think this is like the one guy you definitely should be able to go after. Let us know what you guys think down below about Jay's trade, about bringing Brandon Ingram to San Antonio potentially, or my trade as well. With Cam Johnson going to this Cavs. I had another backup trade. I'm just gonna just bring it up to you because I had like a second one just in case. It was Chris Milton in a top 5 protected 2031 pick for Jeremy Grant. Just quickly, what do you think of that?
I think Jeremy Grant's a good fit. for what Milwaukee is trying to look for. I think that he's much better than the fit that we saw earlier on today, where there were reports centered around Kyle Kuzma. I think Jeremy Grant is a much better version of what it is that they would be trying to get if they're going to move off of Chris Middleton. The understanding at this point is that they need a bucket getter at the 3 spot because they need somebody else who can put the ball on the floor. Obviously, the ability of Chris Middleton, the ability of Chris Middleton is still hyper valued in terms of his ability to help close games, but on a 82 game basis and their ability to just win games on a night-to-night basis, Chris is a liability at this point. And I hate saying that because Chris Middleton just really held the team together in the postseason while everybody was down due to injury just last season. But when you look at what their aspirations are moving forward on what is a relatively short timeline, no matter how you spell it, I don't care how old Giannis is, the timeline of the Giannis-Damian Lillard duo is very short. It's just the truth of the matter. And Giannis and Damian Lillard can both go for 40 apiece, but this team cannot score beyond them on a consistent basis. Jeremy Grant definitely gives them that in a way that I think is not only effective, but I think it's more efficient than, again, a guy like Kyle Kuzma, who's probably a little bit more athletic and a little bit more active on both sides of the ball. But I think Jeremy is just slightly less effective defensively than Kyle Kuzma. But I think his offensive upside as an efficient third option fits better for what Milwaukee wants than what Kyle Kuzma probably slips into.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's definitely a good way to look at it. That's just another thing I want to throw out there. Let us know what you guys think of that.
That's
one
a good trade, though.
well.
That's a good trade, though. If they can get Jeremy, you hate to see Chris Middleton die on the sword like this because that man has just kind of been a lot to their franchise next to Giannis Antetokounmpo. But I mean, if that's the way they're gonna go down, we saw them trade Jrue Holiday not even that far out of winning a championship. So we understand that they're willing to do whatever is necessary, and you have to be willing to commend them for that because some franchises are not willing to put the big boy pants on, and actually make that type of decision. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that they're willing to even go after a Chris Middleton trade for somebody that could be an upgrade at the 3 position is huge. Like I said, I like the idea of Jeremy Grant as a guy to go after more than I do the Kyle Kuzma stuff that was rumored earlier on in the day. And it would just be really interesting to see what Jeremy Grant looks like next to Giannis Antetokounmpo because they both put a lot of pressure on the rim.
100%. But yeah, let us know what you guys think of the trades. Our thoughts on the De'Aaron Fox trade that just happened, the Luka Doncic stuff, that one that we just kept talking about at the beginning of the episode. Let us know your thoughts on that as well. But Jay, we have reached another fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Yeah, man, so we're going to be back later on this week. Obviously, NBA trade deadline is on Thursday, so we'll probably be recording again on Thursday, dropping on Friday in reaction to everything else that has taken place. We might even mess around and revisit this Luka Doncic trade because I think 4 or 5 days, even still more information is going to come out, which might just be worth kind of revisiting just the Lakers side of things. But beyond that, obviously, we know the day of the trade deadline is always kind of the most active because that's when all the last couple pins to papers get done in terms of moving guys around. We're going to try to cover, I believe, I think we said we're going to try to catch every single trade that happens between now and the trade deadline's cutoff point. So we're going to give you our thoughts on every little trade that takes place, big or small, in between, any draft picks that make exchanges, any players that change teams. We have to remember, Jimmy Butler is still a guy on the list. Paul George's name got brought up unironically with the Golden State Warriors earlier on today. Nikola Vucevic from mine. Yeah. Kevin Durant making a possible reunion with the Golden State Warriors came up. There's a lot of different names that started to pop out that I think Luka Doncic not being safe was an indicator that truly anybody and everybody is on the trade block, bro.
Yeah.
And that just
100%.
gives us the chance for what is actually going to be a pretty interesting trade deadline when just a month ago I made a TikTok that said that I didn't think that there was really going to be anything. I thought the 2nd April was going to scare teams out of wanting to be able to do anything super effective that would actually cause real player movement, let alone star movement. Boy, was I wrong, man. Because if you look at this startup that what we've already got so far, we've seen some names change hands. Zach LaVine's on a different team. De'Aaron Fox on a different team. And Luka Doncic, of all people, is on a different team. Anthony Davis. Obviously, I'm naming all guys that were a part of the same trades, but we've seen some high-profile names change jerseys in the course of the last 48 hours, which means that, as far as I'm concerned, anything's up. Anything is up. And that's going to be really great to cover.
And we're going to be trying to cover all of these trades on the next episode, which is on Thursday. So, yeah, again, we want to thank you guys for all your support. Continue to support the Hit Your Free Throws podcast to all our links and all the links below. Also, our individual channels. Be sure to check those out. And, yeah, we're going to be back later on this week. to talk all of the rest of the NBA trade. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, thank you guys for watching or listening. Hope you all have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.